Hi everyone, welcome to this presentation to discuss values, norms, and sanctions and a lot of things within them. I know within the context of our discussion of the first unit, we've talked a lot about values and norms and those in general, but now we're going to talk about these in a format of describing how culture comes together and how these components help make up culture for what it is. You will notice that the very first page of your notes relates to language. This is actually an activity that we are going to do tomorrow. So go ahead and skip that first page. Do not answer any of those questions about language. We'll get to that tomorrow and go right to the second page talking about values. But language, as you'll learn tomorrow, is really the framework for culture. So that's why I put it first within the notes and together with your homework. So again, skip that first page, go right to the second. So values. Values can be described as people's ideas of what is desirable in life. Their preferences, their beliefs, their thoughts of what is good and bad, what they care about, what's important to them. And as we've talked about, values are different amongst people of different cultures and different societies, but values are also different amongst people who are even within their own societies. So you look at our class, we value lots of different things. We value a lot of the same things, but also very different things as well. Does that make us completely separate from one another? No, we're still part of the same society. We still grow up in the same areas, and we're still part of those things that we care about that help society function, our community function overall, that we all work towards. But we're allowed to have separate preferences and different beliefs and thoughts within that construct of our culture. There's also what's known as norms. These are also something that we've talked about before. And every society finds their ways to reflect the values and expectations of the people that live in that society. And this is what's called norms. So we first have this setup of what our values are. What do we care about? But then, as people, we eventually establish, well, how do we want to make sure that we uphold to these values? How do we want to make sure that everyone's following these expectations? And we establish what's known as norms. Norms are rules of behavior that reflect and enforce the values. So if you're looking to kind of create a hierarchy of this, the values are our belief system. The norms are the actions by which we carry out that belief system. And they sort of guide our behavior for what's expected and what's not. Hence this word norms, because they're the things that are quote unquote normal within our society. Additionally, people are also going to react to norms in different ways. So you have the value system, you have your norms that are going to carry out the value system, and then based on how those norms are carried out, people are going to react differently. And these are what's known as sanctions, or expressions of approval or even disapproval for how you uphold or how you violate a society's norms. So for example, if we have in our culture, it is success is a high value. So if you go and get good grades, you're going to see different kinds of sanctions of approval being done to reinforce those good norms that you are doing. However, if you fail classes and things like that, you're going to see a lot of negative or disapproval sanctions that you are going to receive to try and persuade you to not behave in that way. Let's dive a little bit deeper into sanctions. On the grand scheme of it all, there's what's known as positive sanctions and negative sanctions, as I was describing before. The positive ones are anything like money, hugs, smiles, a pat on the back, prizes, anything that you tangibly or intangibly receive to show positively that I approve of the norms that you've done, that I approve of the fact that you followed these norms. Great work, good job, here's what I'm going to give you. On the other side, the negative sanctions are these expressions of disapproval when you break a norm. Fines, negative gestures, cursing, violence, jail time, anything amongst those things, tangible or intangible, that are negative or signs of disapproval for breaking norms are called negative sanctions. You have this in your notes already because it's a lot of information, but I want to break this down from, we see here the positive and the negative sanctions, things that I was talking about before, and there's a few more examples. Within that, there's what's known as formal sanctions and informal sanctions. Formal sanctions are when you either receive a positive or a negative sanction from some sort of formal organization, like a school, a government, a police organization. So when you receive a ribbon or a medal or a badge from your government, that's a formal positive sanction. Or you get a raise at work, that is a formal positive sanction, as you can start to see here. Promotions, pay raises, bonus gifts, rewards. Smiles can be, you see, are on both. But still, anything that you see from an actual establishment, a corporation, a school, police, government, anything like that, are considered positive formal sanctions. The negative ones, the negative formal sanctions are fines, getting low grades, school suspension, job termination, imprisonment, any kind of negative disapproval that comes from breaking a norm from a established organization. This is the formal side of positive and negative sanctions. On the other side, we have the more informal ones. These are more spontaneous expressions, things that are done by an individual or a group, things that aren't really as quote-unquote formal as the name sounds. So, smiles, compliments, praises, a standing ovation, anything from an individual or a small group clearly indicate to you that this is more of an informal sanction as compared to a formal one that comes from a government, police, school, or corporation, or some other type of organization. Negative are the same things: frowns, gossip, scolding, insults, being ignored, things like that. So within a school framework, we can use an easy example. Your teacher gives you an A, that's a positive formal sanction. Your friend hits you in the hallway because you told a big secret to another friend, that's a negative informal sanction. And so you can see the broad spectrum of how all of this comes together and works. And the key here is remembering what a positive sanction is and what a negative sanction is, and then making sure that you focus on is it formal? So again, focusing on where it comes from, or is it informal? Again, focusing on where it comes from. There's also what's known as a moral holiday. And what you've seen here is that there's times where when we break norms, it's not okay. And we don't like this. And in a moment, I'll talk to you about what that looks like within kinds of norms that are broken. But there's something called a moral holiday. There are specific times within a society where it's considered acceptable to break certain norms. So looking at Mardi Gras or spring break, for example, it's never okay to go around publicly drunk and to behave, in a very wild and crazy way. But we look at spring break and we have TV shows about it. And you look at Mardi Gras, people are publicly drunk and doing all sorts of crazy things. This is a clear example of a time where we have a moral holiday, where we look at it and we go, it's okay, it's for this reason, it's not a big deal. The Super Bowl city every year, this happens all the time. We see this constantly. But it gets overlooked because we look at these moments within our lifespan, and we call them moral holidays. So we talked about that there's specific kinds of norms within a society, things that are like folkways, for example. And these are routine ways of doing things that are developed by trial and error. And violation of folkways are going to get only a mild social reaction. So for example, it's a norm to wait at the lights before you cross the street. Well, lots of us jaywalk. And yes, it's illegal, but we do it all the time, and it often gets overlooked. So people might see you walking and doing it and going, well, that's not the end of the world. Or walking on the wrong side of the street. Maybe you might get a funny look, but no one's really going to make a big deal about it. Or facing the wrong way in an elevator. Those are kinds of norms that we have that are more folkways, things that we expect you to follow, but if you break them, it's really only going to elicit a mild social reaction. On the other hand, it's not called mores, it's pronounced mores. And these are things that are taken extremely seriously. These norms are incredibly serious. Why? Because they are essential to our core values. These norms are things that really reflect us as human beings, our morality. Things like not killing someone, not raping, incest, those big things, those norms of things that we don't do or that we're supposed to do that really reflect our morality as human beings at our core. And when these things are not followed, we feel that it really shakes the framework of our culture and we freak out about it. And we insist that people must conform to these kinds of norms. And they must be met with, and it's a demand, it's not a preference, meaning more like a folkway, might seem more like a preference, like you really shouldn't jaywalk, and if you get caught by the police, you will probably get a ticket, but a lot of times, societally, people are going to overlook it. Not with a more. People are going to demand that you must follow it. So like I mentioned before, not raping, no incest, no murder, no stealing, things, and a lot of it sounds like it's a lot of laws, and that's the kind of what it is. Amore is not really necessarily a law, but they align with them because we established laws in our society that really reflect our core values. And if we didn't have them, as with Amore, it would undermine the essence and the framework of our culture. All the way to the other side, on that more side, even further, are what is known as taboos, something I'm sure you've heard of before. These are such strong norms, even stronger than just a more, that because they're so strongly ingrained in our society, even the mere thought of breaking or violating them, just a thought, is wrong. And if you break them, you're considered to be unfit to live within the framework of society. And it is something that you absolutely must not break. So, we will watch an example, a documentary from Nat Geo on taboos tomorrow. But in the meantime, feel free to go back and take a look at anything we've covered: values, norms, sanctions, folkways, mores, taboos. Make sure you have your notes filled in. You have some good examples. Feel free to put any questions into the interactive guide, should you have any of them, and be ready to go to talk about these things tomorrow as we continue to build our understanding of culture. So hope you enjoyed, and take care.